our lead story of the day comes from Timcast regarding the Biden administration colluding with Twitter to censor users. Now, I know all of you are aware that this has been happening, but I do think it's important to look at a holistic view, which Timcast here does perfectly, meaning Tim Pool, in presenting this information, this dump of documents on Twitter for us. Because normally what I do is I'll read a bunch of different articles and kind of take the main points and synopsis of what took place and present it to all of you. But we got a one-stop shop here from Timcast presenting all this stuff. We got the pictures of the tweets, everything we need. So journalist Matt Taibbi worked with Elon Musk in doing this document dump of a bunch of tweets regarding what took place. And that's what we're going to look at here. Taibbi described the Twitter files as a Frankensteinian tale of human-built mechanism grown out of control of its designer. I think there is some truth to that, but mainly what we saw was that it was a few execs, and we'll get to that as we go through these tweets, at the top that were kind of pulling the strings, and you had a bunch of other Twitter employees at the bottom going, hey, we're confused here. What are we doing? Why are we censoring these people, but we're not censoring these people? Why are we making regulation and policy up that's not really happening? It's actually fake. That we're applying to this person, meaning Kayleigh McEnany, saying that she hacked something, she's releasing hacked documents, but we're not going to apply them over here. Whereas we all thought that this whole company's just woke. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of woke people there, but it wasn't everybody. And it seemed like there was only a few people handling this and kind of calling the shots, which is quite interesting because you really see now it doesn't take a lot for people to go corrupt and kind of just sit there and suppress and censor people. So it makes you wonder what's going on at Google, YouTube, and Apple and other freaking big tech companies. Well, slowly over time, Twitter staff and executives began to find more and more uses for these tools. Taibbi said, detailing how the platform became a tool to weaponize information. By 2020, requests from connected actors to delete tweets were routine, and one executive would write to another, more to review from the Biden team. They reply would come back handled. Taibbi included a screenshot of what happened to the email with links to users' tweets allegedly under scrutiny by Biden's team. Oh, isn't that just lovely? Having the executive branch weaponize big tech to suppress the speech of others. People go, well, what's the big deal of that? Well, the big deal is that people rely on information. They rely on access to information to make a good judgment or opinion. And a lot of people did say if they knew about the Hunter Biden laptop pre-election and they weren't told that it was misinformation or Russian disinformation, which was a lie from Democrats and the progressive left, that they would have swung their vote towards Trump. So it has ramifications. This is corrupt as you can get. This is some Orwellian stuff here with the Biden administration suppressing the speech of conservatives and Republicans, suppressing the speech of a president, of his White House press secretary and others. That's not normal. That is not American. But this is what happened here. And again, the Democrats love it, you guys. The Democrats are absolutely for it. If you're a Democrat and you watch this, can you please let me know if you're for or against this? Because based on the voting and based on the polls, that they're okay with this happening. The progressive left are still okay with what took place regardless of the dump here. Taibbi provided a screenshot of an email showing links from users, including actor James Woods. I grabbed the first one under SI, defer to safety on the high-profile second one, said the Twitter employee in response to the Biden team. Quote, this system wasn't balanced. It was based on contacts because Twitter was and is overwhelmingly staffed by people of one political orientation. There were more channels, more ways to complain. One to the left, well, Democrats, than the right, Taibbi said, linking the open secrets detailing a list of Twitter donors, including total amounts received in 2022, along with amounts received by specific individuals who overwhelmingly supported Democratic political candidates, which we all knew about. Again, this is just to show the proof of itself. And here are all the tweets for you. If you wanted to go and click on these yourselves, I'll leave the link down below. Well, Twitter took extraordinary steps here to suppress the story, removing links and posting warnings that it may be unsafe, Taibbi said, of the New York Post article discussing the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop, appearing to implicate then Vice President Biden of corrupt use of presidential powers. Quote, they even blocked its transmission via direct message, a tool that was basically used for extreme cases like child pornography. So they thought that this was such a big deal that it was on the level of child pornography to have this out there to the public. That is scary stuff, folks, and not okay. And I really hope some people go to jail for this. I'm not big into having the government weaponize and show up to people's houses and put them behind bars, but this is BS. Regardless of whether you're Democrat or Republican, I think you should have the right to have your viewpoint out there and not be suppressed, censored, silenced, shadow banned, or whatever it is. Say your piece and let's move on here. I don't delete any comments down below, whether they're from Democrat, Republican, progressive, left, whatever it may be. Some people write some racist stuff down there. I don't like that. But, you know, they have a right to say it. Doesn't mean I'm for it. Just because it's on my channel and some guy wants to, you know, say something inappropriate, you have every right to do that. Doesn't mean I agree with it. Doesn't mean that you should agree with it. Doesn't mean people reading it should agree with it. But it should be allowed to be said so people can make an informed decision. And clearly the Democrats don't want that. Clearly the Biden administration don't want that. It makes me wonder what's out there, folks. It makes me wonder how corrupt this guy is. There was a poll that Glenn Beck did on Twitter. It was actually a really difficult poll because it asked who had more skeletons in the closet. It is between Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and one other person. Hillary ended up winning it out. I mean, I voted for her as well to have the most skeletons. But God, it makes you wonder what people are just covering up here. Although several sources recalled hearing about a general warning from federal law enforcement that summer about possible foreign hacks, there's no evidence that I've seen of any government involvement in the laptop story. In fact, that might have been the problem. Former head of legal policy and trust, Vijaya, reportedly played a larger role in the platform's decision to censor the Post article. And this is what I mean, that by the execs up top kind of pulling the strings of what's going on and really just calling the shots, like a handful of people, when you have thousands of employees that were basically enabling it because they didn't really have the cojones to stand up to her and the execs and go, look, like, we're not going to do this. I'm not for this. This doesn't make sense. If you want us to push this through, you need to make better policy. Now, that becomes easier said than done because you're talking about your boss, right? You're not really going to always stand up to your boss because you don't want to lose your job. It says here, quote, they freelanced it, is how one former employee characterized the decision. Hacking was the excuse, but within a few hours, pretty much everyone realized that wasn't what was going on. But no one had the guts to reverse it, which is what I was just talking about. And they're talking about the Kayleigh McEnany tweet here of releasing was it the New York Post article that she basically released, or at least something about the Hunter Biden laptop. And they're using as if it was hacking was the excuse to suspend her account. And you have the evidence here of them saying, look, this doesn't make sense. How are you going to sit there and play into that? And that's not really what's taking place in present time. I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for making this an unsafe and making this as unsafe. And I think the best explanatory and explanation for this argument for this externally would be that we're waiting to understand if this story is the result of hacked materials. Wow, shocker. Waiting for the evidence to come out to make a decision. We've seen this from Biden. We've seen this from a lot of people left and right, but predominantly you really see this from the Democrats, the Biden administration, the Obama administration. You just most recently had Lori Lightfoot and the governor of Illinois come out and be like, oh, this was a racist thing that took place. I'm speaking of the noose that was found in the basement of Obama's presidential library construction that was taking place, which we did cover here on the Balt Brad Show. For those that are avid listeners, and you know what I'm talking about. For those that are new, hey, welcome. Hit that like and subscribe button, folks. But there was a noose that was found in the Biden presidential library that was being constructed. And you had everybody coming out, including Biden, the White House, everybody going, oh, there's racism. All these people are hate speech and all these things. I would like to point out that as they were doing all these things, the Chicago Police Department were literally investigating and no information was even released. Nobody knew what was going on, but they're just jumping to hate, racism, and all these things. Very similar to here, where they're going to jump towards, oh, it's hacked materials. Oh, she's doing this, she's doing that. While you have other Twitter employees going, well, we should just wait for the evidence, shouldn't we? Well, questioning the company's decision to censor the New York Post will face hard questions on this if we don't have some kind of solid reasoning for marking the link unsafe. Wow, there's some people with logic and reasoning there. Unbelievable. Former VP of Global Comms Brandon Borman asks, can we truthfully claim that this is part of the policy? So now you're really seeing through this of people having massive confusion on what's going on within Twitter. I support the conclusion that we need more facts to assess whether the materials were hacked. This comes from the Deputy General Counsel, Jim Baker. At this stage, however, it is reasonable for us to assume that they may have been and that caution is warranted. We simply need more information. Yeah. Oh, it's still reasonable. We're kind of swinging one side further than the other, but screw waiting for the information. Let's go ahead and just do it anyways. A fundamental problem with tech companies and content moderation, many people in charge of speech know/care little about speech and have been told the basics about outsiders. To be continued. Generating huge backlash on Hill speech, said Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna. Happy to chat if you're up for it. Thank you for reaching out, and we appreciate the heads up. Vijaya said, that's the person we spoke of before, responded shortly after. We put out a clarifying thread of tweets earlier this evening to explain our policy around the posting of private information and linking directly to hacked materials. She was talking and insisting regarding former Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, which we prefaced before. Account was not permanently banned and access would be restored after deleting her tweet regarding the New York Post. It wasn't just about deleting the tweet. Remember, they were using child pornography algorithms and mechanisms to suppress the speech even through direct messaging. So it wasn't just being thrown out to the public. You couldn't even talk to somebody interchangeably behind closed doors about this stuff. So don't give me this whole thing here of like, oh, well, it was just out there for everybody and we wanted to err on the side of caution. No. They were taking a step further. They didn't want anybody talking about this stuff. And then we were told that it was the Russians doing it. This is all the Russians' fault. For years. We were told for years that it was Russian disinformation. Then the media finally, like literally like a month ago, go, oh, you know what? Whoopsie. Actually, no, it was actually real. Oh, goody. Quote, this seems to be a violation of the First Amendment principles if there's a hack of classified information or other information that could expose a serious war crime and that the New York Times was to publish it. I think the New York Times should have that right. I agree. The New York Times should have that right to publish freedom of speech, First Amendment. A journalist should not be held accountable for the illegal actions of the source unless they actively aided the hack. So to restrict the distribution of that material, especially regarding a presidential candidate, seems not to keeping of principles of New York Times v. Sullivan. And also to point out, it's kind of similar to what Snowden did, of Snowden leaking the documents of what America was doing, the government behind closed doors. Whereas it wasn't the journalists that would be in trouble for it. It was ultimately Snowden that did the hacking or removed the documents in the first place, which is why some people believe that Snowden shouldn't get ultimately released in terms of what he did. He shouldn't be pardoned for the actions that he committed. And I tend not to agree with that because I don't think you should be pardoned for doing what he did. It's kind of a struggle within, right? Because you like what he did in the terms of finding that corruption within our government, because a lot of conservatives, Republicans, we don't like big government. We know and we don't trust them. But at the same time, that would release a lot of other people from doing the same thing. And ultimately, now you got stuff being released to China, Russia, Iran, a bunch of people that think America is racist and evil, the progressive left, working in the high levels of government, working the high level of Twitter. And now you can see the snowball effect and the damage that could be done. So if you do it to one, you got to do it to everybody else. Within a day, head of policy receives a ghastly letter and report from Carl Sosbo of the research firm NetChoice, which had already pulled 12 members of Congress, 9 Republicans, and 3 Democrats from the House Judiciary Committee to Representative Chu's office. The Democrats, meanwhile, complained that the companies are inept. They let conservatives muddy the water and make the Biden campaign look corrupt, even though Biden is innocent, read a letter from NetChoice's Carl Sosbo. In their mind, social media is doing the same thing. It doesn't moderate enough harmful content, so when it does, like it did yesterday, it becomes a story. If the companies moderate more, conservatives wouldn't even think to use social media for disinformation, misinformation, or otherwise. See how they just lump everything in there? They just won't even use it at all then. Oh, perfect. So now you just got a nice little little cone to yourself, a little social milieu to yourself where you talk amongst yourselves, push certain propaganda out there for everybody else to see whether it's true or not. And then when a Republican or conservative hops on the platform, they're immediately thrown in there as disinformation, misinformation, or something else that we can come up with. And if we can't come up with something else, it will automatically be deemed harmful content. That's how I read this here, which is wrong. And we did see it. The Democrats were in agreement. Social media needs to moderate more because they're corrupting democracy and making all truth relative. That's an insane statement. It doesn't say progressive left here. It doesn't say independents. It doesn't say the Green Party. It says Democrats were in agreement. Social media needs to moderate, meaning suppress the speech of Americans. And if they don't, then what's going to happen here is that they will sit there and push laws and regulations upon Twitter. They'll remove the donors to Twitter. They'll do all certain mechanisms to make sure they get their way here. But how do Democrats view this? That it's a corruption of democracy. Who had the same messaging was Joe Biden. That Republicans, MAGA, right? MAGA supporters, ultra MAGA, mega MAGA, however he wanted to phrase it, because he kept switching it, are all a threat to democracy. And now you see that same messaging in the heart of the Democrat Party here. And making all truth relative. Unbelievable. When you have the same party, the Democrat Party, saying, oh, it's my truth. It's my truth. Unbelievable. When pushed on how the government might insist on that, consistent with the First Amendment, they demurred. The First Amendment is not absolute. I'm sorry. I know I'm repeating myself here, but what party is saying that it's not absolute? Oh, well, it's the Democrat Party. That's right. So it's no longer just the progressive left here, folks. As I've mentioned, you got the Democrat Party really being absorbed here by the progressive left, and they're infiltrating this party and this type of stuff. I'm not saying every Democrat's like this. That's not what I'm saying. I think there's good Democrats out there that still believe in the First Amendment, still believe in upholding our Constitution, but you're not really seeing that from the Democrat side of the aisle today with Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and others. I know Nancy Pelosi's on her way out, but you literally have a sitting president wanting to sit there and chisel away at your Second Amendment rights by saying he wants to remove assault weapons, whatever the hell that means. This is, you guys, I don't even have words, honestly, God, to describe how nutso this is and crazy this is. This is happening in America in present time. I mean, if you look at the course of history and you see what type of countries that did this type of stuff, they didn't last very long. They didn't last long at all. And as I've mentioned previously, we are an outlier in terms of republics here in the course of human history. And when I say an outlier, there's nobody close to us in lasting this long as a democracy and a republic. Not even close. Tabibi suggested that former CEO Jack Dorsey may have been unaware, and I've been hearing the same thing from other channels as well, by the way, that Jack Dorsey was kind of just left out there in the ether, had no clue what was going on, which I heard he was just basically like a puppet, and that Bajaya was basically the one running it and a couple other people. So that's what I mean, is there's only a couple people with the strings there. Jack Dorsey, from what I've heard, had no involvement in this. So he was unaware of the company behind the scenes actions surrounding censorship of the Post article. Dorsey sent Vijaya an email with a copy of TBB's previous Substack article discussing suppression of the story. The former CEO reportedly intervened in suspensions and other moderation actions, according to TBB. It's been a whirlwind 96 hours for me too. There is much more to come, including answers to questions about issues like shadow banning, boosting, follower accounts, the fate of various individual accounts, and more. There was more stuff leaked, and like I said, this is kind of just a nice synopsis of what was going on and kind of giving us a little bit of credence to our belief of the last couple years. And as I've mentioned, this is why I have you guys hit that like and subscribe button, is because it makes me wonder what's going on in Google and YouTube to suppress the viewership ratings of conservatives as well as Republicans. Maybe it isn't happening. We've all seen some weird stuff. You guys have had your tweets deleted. You guys have been unsubscribed without your doing. There's a lot of things that have happened. And so I'm trying to get around that human interaction from Google, if it is happening, to where maybe we can rely on the algorithm just a little bit here by hitting that like and subscribe button and leaving a comment, meaning we're doing everything we possibly can to combat whatever may or may not be taking place up front there from the execs. So let me know what you think about this one in the comments below, folks. I'll try to release more information if this video does well and you guys like it by showing me that you want to hit that like and subscribe button. We'll do more, and we'll do day 2 of this stuff. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.